Hello and welcome everybody. I'm Jack Miller, the president of T360. Welcome you to another Fireside Friday chat. We have a terrific conversation today that we have planned. Joining me is Kelly White, our SVP of T3 Talent, and she works on us in executive hiring and recruiting. And importantly, our guest, Tami Bonnell, the CEO of EXIT Realty. And welcome, Tami. We're delighted to have you. We were just having such a great conversation leading up to this. I just want to pick that right up. It was so good. But before we jump into that, where are you zooming in from today? And are you at an office, at your home, and kind of where are you?
I'm at my home. I'm zooming in from Massachusetts.
Okay, great. Well, welcome. Well, Kelly and I are both in Austin, Texas today, and both at our home offices. So we're just super excited to have you today. And again, we're having a great conversation right as we get started. So Kelly, do you want to kick us off and kind of jump into some of the planned conversation we had with Tami?
Yeah, absolutely. Tami, thank you for being here. It's so good to see you. And one of the things we were talking about before we got on was the information that you gave us about your organization, that you have more than 50% of your franchisees are female owned and operated. And in addition to that, 2/3 of your leadership team are female. And so we started a conversation around, how did that happen? What are some of the challenges that you've encountered? And just tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, I think every organization attracts who they are, right? You attract your tribe kind of thing. I think that's probably the safest thing to say. And I was fortunate enough to get involved with EXIT in the very beginning of when they came into the United States. So I started off as a regional owner in 1999. In 2000, I became vice president over the US. And in 2001, I became president over the US. And then in 2012, I became CEO. And so we never picked and said, we're going to just go find all these women. We are a very empathy-oriented company, and the foundation of our company is built on human potential. And I think that attracted a lot of women, seeing that potential and seeing choices and seeing that they could have choices. So I think it definitely attracted them. But it's funny, every single person in our leadership team was already doing the job before they got the job. Right, I was already helping the U.S. grow, even though I was owned the New England states. I was already helping the U.S. grow, so it was just somebody noticing and providing an opportunity for me. And I can say that's true for everybody that's in leadership. They were truly already doing the job before they got the job. We got caught up in this passion project and fell in love with being really tied to this cause and wanting to see it grow. And you'll see that level of passion with all of the people that we have in leadership for sure.
Yeah, and so one thing I'd love you to maybe tell a little bit more about this notion of exposure. So we were talking a little bit about that and how as women, we may not know of opportunities or we may not be exposed to them, or you and I were chatting earlier about the fact that maybe even in our childhood or in our raising, we weren't really aware of the ability to potentially be a CEO. I think you said that you should tell the story about being in that group and that no one had met a female CEO before.
Well, I speak to a lot of Girl Scouts and I speak to a lot of schools, and I've done Zoom calls because that's an awful lot of our transportation these days, right?
Right.
And I have probably spoken to about 1,000 Girl Scouts since COVID started via Zoom. And I ask at the beginning, every single one, how many of you have met a female CEO? And not one single hand's been raised. That's really surprising. So I think we have to do a much better job of exposing people to what the possibilities and opportunities are. But in real estate, I can say, there's a group, NAWRB, National Association of Women in the Real Estate Business, and I actually sit on a board with them, the National Diversity Leadership Inclusion Council. Okay. And so we really pay attention to making sure that there's fair representation everywhere, even real estate related, all of the facets. If there's going to be an event and 70% of the people that are attending are female, it shouldn't be all males that are speaking on the stage. And so, bringing up choices for them, not shoving anything down their throat, but bringing up choices for them. And one of the people that sits on the board is from Freddie Mac. And so they decided for equal pay, they don't ask anybody what their prior paycheck was so that they don't have a prejudice leaning towards a different direction. In the National Association of Realtors, the group with Women's Council of Realtors, which actually started because women weren't allowed in the National Association of Realtors, They have a group that they do power, providing opportunities for women entrepreneurs in real estate. So that gives people an opportunity to be exposed. NAWRB and NDLIC definitely does a lot of events surrounding that kind of approach. And the California Association of Realtors, which is the largest group in the country, 200,000 realtors, Sarah Sudachan, Leslie Appleton Young, and Deborah Trapin put together Woman Up. And so they found that out of the top 100 offices in California, only 14 of them were owned by women, but 67% of their entire membership, 200,000 people, are female. So they found an issue. That's when data becomes terrific, right? They found an issue and then said, how can we solve this? And it literally is just that exposure to possibilities, but all the possibilities of financing or funding that organization, and really opening their eyes to what the opportunities and the options are. And so I think they're all really doing a terrific job, but I think that every one of us needs to do our part of jumping in and saying, how can I help that next generation? I know in our organization, we have levels of mentorship. So at our corporate headquarters, we have 20-somethings, 30-somethings, 40-somethings, 50-somethings, 60-somethings, and everybody's kind of passing that wisdom down. And so that I think is definitely helping. And just because of the way our organization works, because people get sponsored into the company, it automatically promotes this mentorship throughout the organization. But I think everyone just doing some sort of top of mind awareness, catching somebody doing something good, highlighting people. They don't even have to be in your organization, right? Highlighting people that are doing something really great or just broke down a barrier or just accomplished something, because you feel the best about yourself when you do something you didn't know you could, but you don't know what you don't know, right?
Yeah, and what's interesting about mentorship, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was one of the things I wanted to ask you about, was not only the mentors that you've had, but recently I was on a panel and I realized that while I've been really good at seeking mentors, I've not done the best job of being a mentor to sort of the next generation of women leaders. And so I'm curious, from your point of view, what's a way for people to get involved in doing that? I know Women Up actually does have a mentorship program, which I think is really great and that's very inclusive. But what are your thoughts about mentoring the next level of women in our industry?
I mentor a lot of people on Mondays and Fridays. I'm on the road as a general rule the rest of the time, and sometimes even on Mondays and Fridays. But I think that it's really, when you see something in someone, and it really takes active listening and actively paying attention to people. When you see something in someone, I think you mention it, point it out, and oftentimes they'll come back to you and say, I'd like that opportunity to be mentored, or even offering, I'd love to share some information on how you could probably do that a little bit easier or navigate that a little bit better. We don't want advice when it's not asked for, right? But I think when you can do it in a gentle way to show somebody, I really see something in you, and I see amazing opportunities. People become what we tell them they can be. And so I think that we just have to make it an automatic part of our conversation all the time. We should be, I believe every leader in this industry should be making this industry better, not just their own company, but this industry better. And that goes without saying that you would be helping other people. But once it becomes an automatic, who learns more, the teacher or the student? The teacher every time. You actually get better at your job by helping somebody else. And it makes you stay ahead of the curve, right? You always want to make sure that you bring your A game. My whole family does martial arts. And once you become a black belt, you really decide, if I'm going to be up in front of that class and I'm going to be responsible for these people, I'm going to make sure that I'm studied up all the time, that I'm aware of what's going on all the time, so that I'm adding value to them like the people before me did for me. And I think the same thing is true in business and obviously in real estate, that we should do the same thing. People want to belong and they want to matter. If you really want to hang on to people, I think that you need to do that. The average time a person in leadership has been with our company, and our company's literally 23 years old, and only 21 of those years have been in the United States, is 16 and a half years.
Wow.
That doesn't happen by accident, right? That's orchestrating a well-oiled team that works together, and we know what each other's strengths are, and we know about each other's lives, and we also know where maybe that person isn't as strong, so that they don't need to be in that lane. And it's like I have to mention it because I'm from Boston, but sports teams, right? Really good sports teams.
Yes.
When you have a really good coach and you have a team that instinctively knows what to do, it really makes all the difference in the world, right? They've played together for a long period of time, so that they instinctively know. I remember we went out and did an event when the Lakers were playing against the Jazz. And this is a long time ago, when the Lakers were winning every single game. And I actually got the opportunity to meet Shaquille O'Neal.
Oh, wow.
And, but everybody on the first string of the Lakers was injured. And so they were all playing second string against the Jazz. But what I noticed instantly, other than it was really kind of funny because I was with a lot of people from Canada, so they wanted to know what period this was because they're all around hockey. But that I knew that the Lakers were going to win even with second string, because it was literally poetry in motion watching them across, right? But the Jazz were really good individual players. They just didn't play together as a team. And I think that will really help companies evolve and people evolve if you have people with you for a long enough time to become that poetry in motion, to become a well-orchestrated machine.
Well, Tami, I'm super interested in all the leaders we've been talking to about their leadership story and kind of and I'm curious about when did you start thinking of yourself as a leader, or were there any pivotal moments for you where you realized, because before we were talking before, you said, well, I knew I wasn't going to pursue some of the career opportunities that were offered to me when I was growing up. But when was it where you're like, I'm going in a different direction, or you made a decision, or you started to recognize that in yourself? And there may be people listening that would help them understand how to recognize that.
Well, first, I actually grew up in a family that my father's favorite statement all the time was watch for opportunities. And he said it about everything. He started off, he was in construction, and he was a builder and a developer, and sometimes he made money and sometimes he didn't, right? So sometimes we had breakfast for dinner and sometimes we had steak. And he had made it and lost it several times. That was definitely something I didn't want to imitate, but yeah. I loved riding in the car with him and watching how he related to people to go collect rents, or to go to a planning board meeting, how he built relationships with those people. I used to beg to go. So I think I always knew that it was going to be something real estate related. But I was instrumental in building 3 major brands before coming to EXIT. I've been in the back room selling franchises, selling regions, building the business from behind for the last 30 years. And when EXIT came along, somebody actually sent it to me to tell me that about competition. And I was top in the world selling franchises. And I thought, what if I did this for me? Like, what if I did this for myself and my family? And I had this opportunity to be able to do it. And people had said it to me probably quite a few times, but I really wanted it to be the right match. So when I started as a regional owner, I really started to take it very seriously, but probably martial arts made me think about it even much younger, that self-discipline of wanting to go further. I never had the picture that, I want to be CEO someday. I just wanted to help advance whatever the cause was, be part of the solution.
Yeah, that's really great. And the other piece that I'm always curious about too is leaders usually bring a leadership gift. There's something that is, part of their superpower, or the thing that they're really good at. I think we're seeing some of your superpower today. You are a compelling speaker. I mean, I was like, let's just let her go because you're amazing. But I'm curious as to your perspective on what you brought to the organization, or what is the thing that you think you're helping teach your organization, or the brokers that work through EXIT, and what is that gift?
Well, I think that I personalize everything. So I think that's probably it. I put myself in the other person's shoes, and I can look at somebody and really just see something in them they don't see in themselves. And maybe I'm just steering them 3 degrees left or 3 degrees right to just see a whole new perspective of who they can become. And people become who we tell them they can be, right? So recognizing that talent in somebody and catching them do something good, that's probably my biggest strength.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. Kelly, any thoughts from
Yeah,
you?
yeah.
I know you do. I know
I'll
you have
talk
that
the
in
whole
common.
time.
Kelly does a lot of coaching and has worked with a lot of business owners. I do that as well. So, and that resonated with me about looking for that spark and saying, hey, what if you were to do? So I don't know, you have a perspective on that? Because I know you do it as well.
Yeah, well, I feel like also just in recruiting, I do that too. You're trying to figure out what's not, I think I said it last week, which is not on paper, right? So someone will give you a resume, or you'll talk to a company and they're looking for something, but it's really a lot of times what isn't on the paper that you find out about, and that I have the ability to see that in people too. And I think I've learned that it's probably more a skill just of being involved in a people business. But it's also, I think, to your point, Tami, awareness. I realized even from our last week's call that I had a new awareness. And so it's interesting. There's somebody that I worked with in the past, and she's a very successful agent, and she runs a team, and she's young. She's 32. And I called her this week and I said, I've never asked you. I just assumed that this is what you wanted your career path to be. But I realized in my role and with last week that I hadn't asked you, what do you aspire to? Because I thought, oh gosh, she's not involved in Women Up or in sort of in the industry conversation. And she's not being exposed to, the Tami Bonnells of the world or whomever. And so, I think just having that conversation with people and saying, what is it that you're looking for? So that maybe it might be 5 years before that is. But she was like, I didn't really think about being involved in the industry in that way. And so I think that it's such an important thing to be able to do that. And we have to stop, I think, enough to really listen to what they're really saying, or even maybe what they're not saying. So anyway, I probably digressed on that, but I totally relate to that.
I think I do my homework on people before I meet with them. So I Google them, I friend them on Facebook, I connect with them on LinkedIn. If there's somebody I think that knows them, I'll ask about a perspective. And, it's not to turn into being a creepy person.
Yeah.
I will literally tell them I care enough about them to know, so that I can make sure that whatever I'm going to do today is going to add value. And I think it's so personal. To find out somebody's dreams, you have to build a relationship, right? To find out really what they aspire to be and what they've had for pictures of their dreams, you do have to find out what's really important to them. And they're not going to share with you if you don't build any type of rapport or any type of a relationship. They're not going to share with you what it is that they really want to do. It's kind of like the elephant in the room. They're just going to follow whatever that role is that you're playing back and forth. But when you can come in and connect on a more personal level and really empathize with them, I think that's the exact reason that in real estate, we know that you better be high tech in order to survive. But if you're not high tech touch as well, you're not going to excel, because you really need to be the solution for that person in front of you. And people move because of their circumstances, right? Whether you're recruiting an agent, recruiting a brokerage, selling a region, or selling real estate, people move because of their circumstances. But nobody's going to tell you they're losing money or they're struggling or they're concerned with something or something major, unless you build enough of a relationship so that they feel comfortable to be able to do that. And that's when you really can add serious value to the conversation and to building that person.
Yeah, and that's probably a good segue into, what are you experiencing now with the challenges with COVID and people, doing distance learning with their kids, and, how have you worked to support your people, and just kind of what are you noticing are the unique challenges that are going on right now with your people?
Well, I think, everybody is facing different things. And I see that on one side, stress is because they had unfinished business before they came into this and they were underprepared, right? They didn't lay enough groundwork. So there are people that are stressed because of unfinished business. There are people that are suffering anxiety because they're afraid of what's going to happen and they're already catastrophizing the future, instead of, we've all been in unknown circumstances before and we're still here, right? So it's getting them centered. And us as a company, because we were built on human potential, we didn't lay anybody off during COVID, nor did we during the worst recession since the Depression. We said our people are too valuable. And so during the recession, we actually, us in leadership, took a hit in pay. And we said, we're going to outsell and outthink our way out of the recession. And that built a respect line that continued into now, so that when COVID was announced, it was magical. Our people, everybody, all the way to the person answering the phone, raised their hand and said, how can we help? So within 48 hours of people being sheltered in place, we launched a stimulus package for our agents and our brokers and our regional owners worth in excess of $50 million.
Wow.
We got all of our trainers to provide training so that they were literally getting training, but not just how do I ramp up so that I'm ready when things get out, but understanding how they think. We actually have a whole entire series on focusing on good health, teaching them everything from meditation to yoga to being in the current tense, right now, present in the current tense. We worked with a lot of our partners to provide solutions. So we have a mobile business card so nobody has to touch paper, right? You can text 85377, punch in TAMI, hit send, and you'll get my face sent to your phone and my contact information. That made it so that nobody had to hand out a card because there's a lot of fear out there.
Yeah, right.
But we also have smart sign technology so that if you pull in front of a listing and you text either that agent's vanity code or text exit, the listing's going to populate to your phone. So now if a buyer's going out and they're desperate because there's this unbelievable crazy urgency out there, and say they want to look at 10 homes, they'll drive in front and they'll get the information sent, and now they're only going to go into one or two, right? The ones they're really interested in, which also makes them and the seller feel safer. And we have an app that helps them to stay connected and communicating with somebody so that they can add value and they can see in real time what's going on, but without having to have that much touch. So we responded pretty quickly in that direction. But we have a franchise support team that works from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and you can call, text, or chat. So they're always getting a live person.
That's
I
awesome.
find the biggest thing, and whether it's on a Zoom call like this, people just really they want to be heard, and even just sounding it out, being able to say, I'm really scared about this, or I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to make my mortgage payment this month, or these 3 deals fell apart because these people lost their jobs. So it's not even that I wasn't doing my job, right? But there are also silver linings. I mean, there are amazing silver linings in this too. I see people becoming more humanized. I see real estate becoming more humanized. People are becoming more neighbors, all right, more neighborly, more community oriented, so that they're reaching out and connecting. I'm normally on about 150 planes a year. I had 50 speaking engagements canceled between March and April. Wow. I did 35 of them through either Facebook Live or Zoom. And where I would have gone into an audience of 500 to a couple thousand people, some of those have been viewed in their entirety 50,000 times. So now you've got a different hit ratio or a different opportunity for exposure, which I think is really good too. But you have to look for the silver linings where things are. I'm very strategically oriented, so I always look, part of my job as CEO is to be a good forecaster. So I always look ahead for, where's that 30,000 foot view? Where's that street level view? Where's that view of the clients today? And then where's the perspective on the person that's serving them? And there are some amazing windows of opportunity because it reminds me of, not for the same reasons, but it reminds me a lot of 9/11, that people actually sat back and said, okay, if this is our new world, what am I going to do with my life? And they started making some really strong life-changing decisions. And I think now they're doing that too. We're going to see agents getting out of the business that didn't ramp up and didn't prepare. We're going to see people, brokers, we're doing a tremendous amount of mergers and acquisitions. And we're going to see that for a lot of mom and pops that are going to, they can't ramp up to the technology. They don't want to, frankly. A lot of them don't even want to, but they love and care for their people. And so a lot of them are probably even retiring 1 to 5 years earlier than they thought they were going to, because they don't want to ramp up after this. So that's a window of opportunity for brokers for certain. And agents that aren't happy while they're busy and they're on this treadmill, even if they're not happy, a lot of times they don't want to change right now, but now they're actually having conversations with everybody about what are my choices and what are the opportunities. They had time, especially when we first sheltered in place, to really stop and think, what's my quality of life? What do I really want out of this? And people's lifestyles, they're starting to change. I'm seeing an awful lot of teams too being formed because they're saying, a little bit of this work-life balance wouldn't be so bad, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So
you have an incredible perspective. I mean, you touched a lot of different pieces there. in terms of the changing demographics. And we've been writing about that in the trends report for years now. And the opportunity right now, we think now is the time of incredible opportunity, because
Huge.
people did hit the pause button and think for a second and say, wait a minute, what do I want to do now? And where do I want to end up? And we're seeing the same thing that you're seeing in terms of, potential merger acquisition opportunities, people deciding they don't want to go it alone anymore, or they want to, be part of something else, or they want to configure it differently. So I think that's really great set of observations there that I would say we're also seeing from the conversations we're having with brokers. I'm curious about what you're seeing in markets. Are we're talking to a lot of leaders also about what's happening with the dynamic in the real estate market right now. Everything we're seeing is indicating, all the brokers we're talking to are busy. Like it's incredible. But what you've got a big national footprint, bunch of people. What does it look like from that perspective?
A tremendous amount of our offices are having their best year yet, right? And so even if they hit a pause button for March, April, they're in the spring market now, and they're definitely seeing that. But we're seeing I'm going to tell you a couple of trends I see and a couple of trends I expect to see. But trends that I see now, there's such an urgency to get into ownership. I do have one concern with that. A lot of people are seriously overpaying for property. And so how long is it going to take for that equity line to balance, because they're just so desperate to get in with interest rates that are terrific. But we're also seeing a lot of people that are moving, luxury is moving to a lower tax base because they know that they can satellite from home for a period of time. We're definitely seeing a lot of that going on. First-time home buyers are obviously out with a vengeance. A lot of people are moving from the city back out into the suburbs because they want to have more room and more land. And they're realizing, if I have to commute for an hour and a half twice a week or 3 times a week instead of 5, I can do that. Yep. Right. And then rest of the time that they can satellite from home. So we're seeing that. Older people are having a tendency, seniors and even more seniors, right, are wanting to move out more into the country, more closer to nature. We're seeing an awful lot of that. So every move is providing another move. We're going to see crazy zoning changes. If I had to give advice to any agents or brokers on the line, I would say pay attention to your municipalities and planning boards, because we're going to see shopping malls do everything from turn into an Amazon supply chain to turning into a 55 and older project, or maybe even a millennial condominium project that they're all entrepreneurs, and they're going to have a satellite in the middle that they're all going to share costs for being able to do technology. And then people that want to get it back to nature, that we're going to see subdivisions that are all green and that they have their own organic gardens. And we're going to see a tremendous amount of changes. And that is where I would pay attention right now, the planning boards and municipalities. The migration chart that we're seeing now is going to change so rapidly that it's you're not going to be able to catch up with the migration chart. So you really want to pay attention and have conversations with movers, especially not just people that are moving homes, but moving businesses. And so that you can find a window of opportunity. Way back in the day, which is way too long ago to even talk about, I remember finding out about Hewlett Packard relocating a whole bunch of people. And this is, literally almost 40 years ago. And I ended up with that window of opportunity, watching for the opportunity of seeing that they were going to relocate 33 people. And I ended up selling 31 of them. Wow. Because of being ahead of the curve, right? So there are going to be a lot of opportunities like that. We're going to see a lot of multi-generation families coming back together because they want to be closer to each other and they want to keep an eye on each other. And they've been helping each other so far, so that we're going to see a lot of things zoned so that they can put in in-law apartments and make sure that they have enough room and enough space so that people still have a space to go to. And, for me, I always try and pay attention to where those possibilities are from a 30,000-foot view. And then for everybody, wherever your state or province is, because that obviously will be different trends depending on where you are. There'll be a couple trends that are going to be really huge. New construction, we're seeing it everywhere. I'm sure that everywhere you're driving, you're starting to see it too. They're really catching up on that demand, but they're going to be more flexible right now. And so the concern on the other side, though, is there enough water where they are? Is there enough power where they are to be able to do that, because I do think that there's going to be a little bit of them that are, some of them that are going to be short-sheeted, and that's going to impact supplies places. But and then we're going to see people starting to move to higher ground. In our lifetime, we will definitely see foreclosures due to climate change, without question. That's not for today. That's not touched to COVID, but over the next 20 years, for certain, there's no doubt about it. It'll hit.
You can already see some of that in, you know, if you're in an area that has a lot of wildfires in California, you know, there's some areas out there that it's, you know, you're not in a bad, it's not a bad economy causing it. It's because of the fire risk and the cost of insurance. Even some of the coastal areas, some of those areas, their insurance costs have gone up so much that owners are saying, you know what, we're not going to rebuild. We're going to do something else. So
well, and that's why all of the brokers and agents should have allies that we're in the area that they represent, right? Mortgage company, appraiser, home inspector, insurance companies, so that they know all the changes, so they can really be the solution for the person they're representing, right? I can be the solution for that person, whether I'm going to help them invest because they have big real estate dreams and they want to have investment property, but I want to make sure that that first-time home buyer isn't either in a flood zone that's going to cost them a fortune and just blew them out of the water, or that they're a water heater away from being able to afford where they're moving into, right? So being the solution and being able to give them a fully faceted perspective is going to be imperative for people that stay in this business. Without question, they're going to need to be the solution. You can't deliver that, you know, the consumer is drowning in data, they have all this information, but they don't know how it impacts them personally, how it's going to impact them and what the effect is going to be. And people with real estate experience can really give them that and give them that full circle. But that is going to be a demand. It's not going to be, you know, the people that are just getting a lead and running out to go in front of somebody. They're going to have to justify being paid what they're being paid if they don't have experience and expertise in all those facets.
this is a fascinating conversation. Kelly, I've got more questions. Do you have anything?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, no, I mean, my brain's going on 100 miles an hour, but yeah, go ahead.
Great. Oh, so good. So good. Well, I did want to know also what you thought about the real estate office, because that is something, because of these changes, you know, you talked about people, you know, they're not going in every day. They're working from, we were already on that. I mean, we're, as an industry, we're already on that trend. Yeah. But what do you see in your franchise and your?
Well, I do see that there are a lot of people that won't need as much space as they need. In fact, we'll see a lot of zoning changes with businesses and commercial, that there'll be a tremendous amount of mixed use. It's going to be through the roof, and which is actually kind of unique. And you never know how creative somebody's going to get until they get to that other side. But I don't think they're going to need the same amount of space, but there is nothing that gets delivered better than when it gets delivered live. You know, it's nice to be able to see each other on a screen, and it's nice to be able to relate and see everybody's face. It's not the same as a hug or really sitting down with somebody and saying, no, seriously, how you doing? And to even be educated and have a group that comes in together and has a meeting on a regular basis, so that they feel part of something, because they want to be part of something better, and they want to be able to contribute to that. So I don't see it as turning completely virtual. Right. You know, when you see landlord-tenant relationships and you see things that are completely virtual, who do you go to for help? You know, that's a big numbers game, and I can get a lot of bodies maybe, but if they need to have expertise and they need to actually be able to bring it, you know, to be the solution for whoever they're in front of, they're going to need to continue with getting regular, steady education. And they want leadership. You know, they interviewed people doing 50 transactions a year or better. Number one, they wanted leadership. Number two, they wanted education. Imagine that, the people that produce want more education.
They want more, yeah.
Right. Number three, they wanted help with technology. And that's a really important point too. Not that they wanted to become a technology specialist, but they wanted to have the things that it's the human behind the device, the human behind the transaction, that they could build that connection. Number four, they wanted help with the details, right? And that's a lot harder to teach via Zoom. Number five, they wanted a marketing program they can track so they know what they're leveraging and what they're not. Number six, they want image. They want to have that polished professional image. And number seven, they wanted to have skin in the game. They want to have some sort of vested interest, that they know that they're putting their efforts into something that they're going to get a return on. So I think that we're going to see offices still there, but I definitely think they won't be the Taj Mahal. That they'll be smaller space. I think a lot of the brokers that own their own buildings will be having those allies. Maybe they're renting out to those allies so that it's one-stop shopping under one roof. And I think the people that are renting, they'll definitely be able to cut down some of that space, but there still needs to be a commuter space that people can come in and work out of, and an opportunity for people to be able to, when we can, that people can come out and meet live. I don't know if any of you have gotten on the road yet, but I actually traveled 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you the world's not really ready for that yet either.
Really?
I had a phenomenal experience with Delta. Everybody was 6 feet apart. They taped off the seats. They gave you, with a glove and a mask, they handed you hand sanitizer and a bottled water and a snack. And they boarded from the back to the front. They had everybody stay completely apart. They did a phenomenal job. And then the following week, I flew through Chicago O'Hare, no social distancing at all.
Oh, wow.
Not everybody had a mask on. Mm-hmm. And there was no distancing on that plane, none. So, it will be really nice when we get an opportunity for, just like this, right? That we get an opportunity for everybody to share best practices. So we just raise that whole industry and we help each other. I mean, it would be a wonderful thing if all the countries shared everything they're doing that's working with COVID, instead of trying to keep it a secret and make it that they want to be first, right? It would be a great thing if we do that, because all boats rise to the same tide. And you want to make sure that this is a well-respected industry. I mean, where else can you build this level of wealth?
It is a bastion of the American system, real estate. It's the core of wealth creation and such an entrepreneurial industry. So I know Kelly and I had one last conversation that we wanted to have before we wrap up with you, which we had so much fun with last week, which was about, women leaders that we admire and people that we look up to, both in our industry and outside our industry. So, I thought I'd kick that off and say, is there anybody that you follow and that you're also, you're passionate about their career or their leadership or what they're doing, and that gives all of our listeners more people to pay attention to?
Well, all the women that I just mentioned with Woman Up, Sarah Sudachan, Leslie Appleton Young, huge fan.
Me too.
She's a very grounded, I speak to economists all the time, and a lot of them speak a different language.
Yeah, it's really another, you're like.
And I'm a math maniac, but she speaks very grounded about how it's impacting people. Lawrence June, actually, he does too, which is really great. It's they're humanizing it so that everybody can understand. And Deborah Trapin, who's been really participating with that. Bernice Ross was ahead of her time with doing Awesome Females and pulling it together. I have to say, all of my co-workers that are in leadership, Erica Gillio, who's our Chief Operating Officer, it's really nice to have this core group of individuals that definitely have your back. And we definitely have that. Outside of it, I love people like Ariana Huffington that aren't afraid to actually speak what's going well in her world and what's not, and still be able to lead. I think that human element of having transparency, owning it when you're right and owning it when you're wrong too. I really love that. I mean, everybody would be remiss if I didn't say Oprah Winfrey. But Madeleine Albright, people like that, I just really admire that. This is probably the wrong word to say, but I'm going to say it anyway, that had the balls to come and speak and have change things for somebody else, and change it with unbelievable dignity and grace, for really paving the way for other people, and standing up when something's right and standing up when something's wrong. I admire that in all of these women. Strong women love strong women and want to see strong women succeed. And so, Joanne Stevens, who was the president of Women's Council of Realtors nationally, I love to see people lead with grace, no matter what's going on in their own world and no matter what's going on in their own lives, to be able to bring it because I made a commitment and I'm going to stick with it. I really admire that tremendously.
Well, that's fantastic. Kelly, any comments or thoughts on that conversation?
Yeah, well, Tami, we love a lot of the same people. It's funny, I didn't mention Bernice Ross last week, and I was remiss because, Bernice has been such a big influence in my life. And I feel the same about the Woman Up movement with Sarah and Leslie Appleton and Deborah, obviously. I like my life coaches. You know, I mentioned last week I follow Brooke Castillo, but I also like Lauren Zander. So I tend
Absolutely.
to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you remind me of the videos that you've been doing are incredible. I know you were doing them before, but you've stepped it up even more. I've noticed during COVID, which has been so inspirational, I'm sure for your own people, but just like in general, I think you do such a great job with your videos
Thank you.
that you post. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
You know, who I didn't mention last week was Amy Cheroux. So Amy Cheroux I've worked with and, you know, worked with Sherry Chris, who I mentioned last week, but there's just so many
There's so
amazing
many.
women in our industry.
Yeah.
Vanessa
And,
Jones, I mean, like just, we could sit here for 20 minutes and name them.
you know, Bernice Russ did a Awesome Females a few weeks back.
Yes.
I got the opportunity to speak, and we had all these people in attendance. But what I loved so much, because that group, there's an environment, and this is an awful lot of women leaders from all faiths, right? All brands. And for them to sit down and really be honest of what's going on in their world right now, so that someone else could empathize or actually feel comfortable enough to say the same thing. You know, there's a woman sitting there with children around her, and I haven't even had a chance to wash my hair, and that's why I'm in this ponytail. This is the real world right now for me. And it was really nice, because where do you get to do that if you have to lead all the time and you need to keep yourself in this strong lane? So I really appreciate that there's that opportunity for the freedom to have the conversations. And, you know, we've heard, you know, I was born in the 60s. So, you know, we heard that women were catty. You know, that was something that you heard in, you know, your early teen years maybe, and start to hear. And I've never found that to be true. I find that insecure people might need to push somebody in a negative direction, but secure people that are really grounded, strong women love strong women, and they want to see them succeed. And it's literally all of us are in that same boat where, you know, we're a team bonded together to make sure that everybody else survives through that. So I love following a lot of people's podcasts. I think that's a great way for people, whether you're reading a book or doing podcasts, to be able to stay in a positive frame of mind, and in outside of this industry too. I mean, I think that it's so important to see other things. I've sat on a lot of boards for battered women's shelters and been president of a battered women's shelter. And I can tell you that a lot of the things that you learn outside of your industry, you bring back into this industry just from a different angle, right?
I totally agree.
So we're not repetitively repeating ourselves, right?
Yeah.
we're growing. But I think the biggest thing for every female person that wants to lead is that you have to stay growing. You have to stay growing as an individual, personally and professionally, in order for people to follow you. Nobody's going to follow somebody that isn't steadily growing. And I see that with that while we were talking about mergers and acquisitions. I see some of those people, they thought that they could bring in all these people into their office and then stop.
Right.
And
Yep.
it's a steady, consistent thing, and you need to be steadily growing. And if you're at a point where you don't want to do that anymore, you're ready for a different chapter, don't hold on, because by the time you stay holding on, you might lose everything. And today you might have a window of opportunity of being able to get a return on what it is that you've built. So I think people should always ask themselves really effective questions. Where am I? Where do I want to be? You know, who should I be talking to? Who should I be learning from? And, you know, we can learn from absolutely everyone.
That is such an interesting thing about, I've recently learned with the questions, why it's so important is when you ask a question, your brain automatically tries to answer it. And so it's critically important, the questions that you ask, because your brain's going to be trying to find the answer. So, you know, it's a brain science thing as well, which is fascinating. The other thing that came to mind when you said that is this lifelong learning that you talk about, and growing and all of that. I think that's one of the reasons why in our industry, I was saying to someone yesterday, I think it was, that, you know, it's so interesting because in this industry, I don't feel this cattiness or people being really threatened. So it's very unusual when I encounter that. And it just made me wonder if it's because we're around people who are growing and are learning. And in order to continue to compete in this business, you almost have to be, you have to almost override the brain that tells you not to do it because you're scared or it's uncomfortable or like this feels terrible or whatever the thing is. And so I love that about our industry, is that that we're in a place where people do that. And so I'm just wondering if that's why women are less threatened in our industry. We have sort of evolved learners.
Well, and it's a place where everybody has the same equal opportunity to earn, right? And that's pretty rare in other industries. So everybody has that same opportunity. I think that really has a huge impact on whether people will grow or not. But I also think it's because we attract our tribe, right? So you're attracting people to you. If you're a growing individual, you're attracting people that are going to help you grow and that you're going to help them grow. If you're in that other tribe that's not helping people, maybe they're attracting different people into their lives. And so, but I think it's a good idea to go out and seek, what could I do better? And that goes back to what we started with, of just exposure, right? Giving them exposure so that it can show them possibilities. A couple of years ago, my husband and I went to Nantucket and went to the Nantucket Project. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's amazing. So we went for this weekend, and there was just Nelson Mandela's grandson spoke. There was a young woman that created a flashlight that lit up from the warmth of your hands, because she didn't feel like it was right for people in third world countries to not be able to learn because they didn't have light to be able to study and to do homework. And first, after the first day, all I thought is, oh my God, I completely suck as a human being, and I really need to grow. But the other part of it was just, it's such a good idea for you to step outside of what you're at, when you realize, we're not saving lives, we're not building nuclear bombs, this business is not that hard. Have a conversation, find out what's really important to somebody, and deliver, which is very different than a lot of other industries that are out there. So I think we owe it to people. The biggest weakness we have is that the threshold to get in is so easy that a lot of people come in and think that they're going to make a fortune and they can just stand around, and it's those people that aren't producing that have that negative impact. And I do think with things like COVID and where we're going with technology, and I think it's always going to be high touch, high tech, but it's going to have to be both, and they're going to have to really bring their A game. So I'm hopeful that that'll make it so some of these people that aren't producing, that they'll go and do something different, so that we can really make sure that this is truly a profession.
So
well, Tami, you've been so generous with your time today, and I know we ran past our clock. So I just, as the person watching that clock and making sure we keep all of our commitments, I just want to say thank you for the time and for your knowledge and wisdom today. This was an amazing call.
Amazing.
You shared so much, and thank you for doing that. I know we kept a big audience here all day.
Thank you.
Really appreciate you joining this conversation. You've added a ton. Kelly, any last thoughts from you, or anything you want to say?
No, just thank you for sharing all of your insights and the trends and your thinking. It's been incredible. So thanks, Tami.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure getting to know both of you a little bit better, and I look forward to chatting again soon.
We will.
Sounds good.
Thanks
Thank
again.
you.
Have a great day.
You too.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.